If there's ever a big way to guarantee to draw a lot of crowds to a theme park, it is to build something huge. So today I'm going to be talking about some of those huge roller coasters that are not necessarily bad, but mainly just spoiled potential. But don't worry, because there are some actually terrible roller coasters on this list. Wait a minute, am I actually going to have to do research? Oh my god. Now for me, there seems like an easy and obvious place to start this one off, and that is the big one at Blackpool Pleasure Beach. 213 foot tall, 205 foot drop. World's tallest roller coaster when it opened. And I am going to stop myself there because I know I talk about this a lot on the channel, so this is mainly just a starting point to me. It's sometimes good, sometimes bad. If you want to hear more about this, here's a plug, go watch here's a plug, go watch the top 10 at Pleasure Beach video and I'll talk about it a bit more on there, so I can spare you the terrible triangle jokes. Anyway, I said this was a good starting point, and it is, because this leads me on nicely to another hypercoaster built by Aerodynamics in the very same year, and that is Desperado. Buffalo Bill's Hotel and Casino. This one is 209 feet tall and has a 255 foot drop into a tunnel, and it's near Las Vegas somewhere. So that's already a bad start. More on that later. But this is very similar to the big one, and this is because, yes, it's the same model and it was built in the same year, but it's also very painful. It also has no airtime, and it's also just not very enjoyable and has a boring layout. And this is worse than the big one as well, because they send trains every 10 minutes on a good day, but oh guys, it's got a big mountain, so you know, Disney level theming right there. Now you're probably thinking, okay, so those first two were the same model and they're similarly bad. Similarly bad. So what's coming up next? Well, it's another one of the same model, so shut up. I picked this one out because it's interesting and nobody's really heard of it. It's called Titan Max, and it was at Space World in Japan until 2017 when it shut. It's not quite a hypercoaster, it's 160 feet tall, so it's not quite met that 200 feet bracket, but it is very similar to the other two. I can't really find much about how it rides. I suspect it's a bit rough, but probably decently enjoyable sometimes, like the big one. And the best thing about this ride is the music. I mean, it's my jam. Sounds like Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 music that I use in my videos. Anyway, some great features of this roller coaster is that it has a very, very slow mid-course brake run and some really sketchy profiling in places. Look at that. What? Anyway, okay, I hear you. They're three of the same model in a row. Who you're getting bored of that. So what's next? It's Steel Phantom at Kennywood. Right, no, stop. I need to explain this one. So first of all, you all got pranked because this is also a big arrow with a 200 foot drop. Second of all, I'm talking about Steel Phantom, not Phantom's Revenge. If you don't know what that is, I'm about to explain it. So Steel Phantom was an arrow looping coaster that opened in 1991, and it was the fastest roller coaster in the world at that time by an insane margin. This is because it was only 160 foot tall, but it took a massive 255 foot drop, which isn't off the lift hill. So you go into the second hill with a lot of speed already and then plummet down nearly 230 feet. It did that using the terrain and basically diving off a really steep hill, and that's why it made a record that was almost unbeatable for ages. Now this coaster, after it dived off the hill, it went back up the hill and did a bunch of janky arrow inversions, basically the kind of layout you'd find in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3. And it hurt people. The park then announced that they were going to shut it because there were lots of complaints about it being painful and not enjoyable, and then the park's fans got mad. So in the closed season from 2000 to 2001, they hired Morgan. And Morgan basically came in and redesigned the line. They used bits of the same lift hill and stuff like that, and they made it take a very similar path down that huge drop. But after that, when it comes back up out of the valley, they added a bunch of really strong airtime hills, and put new trains on it, and now people regard it as one of the best coasters in the States for its crazy airtime. So Morgan, or Chance Morgan, rehauled a ride and made it amazing. In the year 2000, this relatively small company was hired to build one of the biggest roller coasters ever made, Steel Dragon 2000 in Japan. Unsurprisingly, this opened in the year 2000, and when it opened, it was the world's tallest roller coaster, like a lot of the ones on this list. 318 foot tall, 306 foot drop, and although it opened 20 years ago, it is still the world's longest roller coaster at 1,133 feet. And that is absolutely ridiculous, given also the fact that this roller coaster was built to withstand earthquakes because of the region of Japan it's in, and that requires a stupid amount of steel. So anyway, why is this absolute monster on this list? Well, it's definitely not bad, but like I said at the beginning, it's a bit of spoiled potential. It's not really got any airtime, very long, but it's just got lots of helixes which aren't that intense. For the company that 1 year later went over to overhaul Steel Phantom into something legendary, it feels like they could have done a bit better. Now I am being a bit negative here because actually it's still a very good coaster, and it was made a lot better in 2013 when it got new trains from B&M, making it a lot more open. So despite the fact that it could have been better, it is still a very good ride with a length and scale that's unmatched. And even if it's not that thrilling, it's still going to be extremely impressive to any coaster enthusiast. 3 months earlier than this coaster was Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Oh, no, stop, no! Millennium Force was the world's first Giga coaster, and it opened in the year 2000, again, unsurprisingly. A Giga coaster being a coaster with a drop between 300... A Giga coaster being a coaster with a drop between 300 and 400 feet. Yes, for all of you out there, Orion is a Giga. Stop arguing. Anyway, speaking of arguments, to the present day, people argue about Millennium Force a lot. Millennium Force has dominated the annual Golden Ticket Awards, which is where a bunch of seemingly idiots vote on what the best roller coaster in the world is, and I think Millennium Force has won it 15 times. So lots of people seem to think it's the best coaster in the world. Other people seem to think they're comedic geniuses and call it Millennium Forceless. I mean, honestly, like, you're hilarious. You should get your own chat show. Is it the best roller coaster in the world? No. Is it still extremely good? Yes. It was the world's first roller coaster to be built at this scale. And of course, yeah, it's not going to have insane, huge ejector airtime hills, and it's not going to be as intense as Intimidator 305 and all of those things. It's very good for the world's first Giga coaster, but I think some people just a bit disappointed that they've been on the world's most intense roller coaster, which is also a Giga coaster built by the same company. Anyway, moving on, the next roller coaster on my list is Kingda Ka. And Kingda Ka is on the list because it is worse than Top Thrill Dragster. To give background to this, in 2003 opened Top Thrill Dragster, which was the world's first strata coaster, a roller coaster between 400 and 500 feet, and that was at Cedar Point. It got rave reviews, it was an absolutely amazing coaster, and it held the title of world's tallest coaster for about 2 years. 2 years later, in 2005, came Kingda Ka. Both of these roller coasters, Intamin launch coasters, they both do the same thing. They launch really fast up into a huge top hat. This beat Top Thrill Dragster's 420 foot tall, 400 foot drop record and raised it to 456 feet tall, 418 foot drop. And it is still the world's tallest roller coaster. So that sounds quite a bit better. So why is Kingda Ka worse? It's because Kingda Ka got rid of the amazing lap bars and the really exposed trains that Top Thrill Dragster has, and Kingda Ka also has a really shaky launch. So they really did take a roller coaster that everybody loves, try to push it a bit by making it a bit taller, and ruin it by putting over the shoulder restraints on it. What Kingda Ka does do better though, is that it has a big airtime hill at the end. but no one talks about that because they'd rather rant about how the world's tallest roller coaster isn't as good as the world's second tallest roller coaster. Now, a lot of the roller coasters that I've talked about in this video came from a period of time called the Coaster Wars, which was about 10 years or so, where loads of parks kept on building the world's tallest and fastest roller coaster to outdo each other. The big ones, Steel Dragon 2000, Millennium Force and Kingda Ka, were all part of that. But the roller coaster that started the Coaster Wars was quite often considered to be Magnum XL 200, which was the world's first hypercoaster at Cedar Point. But I'm not going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about the roller coaster that inspired that. Going back over to Japan, Bandit is a large roller coaster built by Togo, and it is very unique. This coaster was very influential. As I mentioned, it did start the Coaster Wars, and it did that by being a very big roller coaster that doesn't have any inversions, and that's where the idea for these huge hypercoasters and gigacoasters came from. Although the company that built this, Togo, have a terrible reputation in the United States, as you will find out later, Togo had quite a good reputation in Japan. This coaster is very interesting because it's 167 feet tall, but it's got a 255 foot change in elevation, meaning the highest part of it is 255 feet higher than the lowest bit. And that was in 1988, so that's very impressive. Although it might not be the most thrilling roller coaster, it's almost a relaxing glide through a load of valleys. Overall, it's just an interesting coaster that deserved a mention. So this is what you've been waiting for. I get to talk about a genuinely terrible coaster. I teased it before by talking about Las Vegas and by talking about Togo. So now we have the Togo in Las Vegas. Now just remember, get that in your head, it's in Las Vegas, right? Because the place that it's at is called the New York Hotel, and it's not in New York. So the Big Apple roller coaster is 203 feet tall, and it's got a 144 drop, and it is well known for being one of the worst roller coasters in history. What reasons are there? It's got terrible restraints, where you've got a bar going over your lap, and ones that hold your shoulders down. It's got some of the worst profiling I've ever seen. It's got a really strange layout. It's horrendously rough, and it costs something stupid. I haven't looked up the price, but I'm pretty sure it's like $15 a ride at least. Let me say, it probably does a very good job at keeping people inside the casino, because if I was at that casino, I wouldn't go outside to ride this roller coaster. I would stay in the casino, because I don't want to be traumatized. What's next? It's Goliath at Six Flags Magic Mountain. This is a 245 foot tall coaster with a 255 foot drop, and it's a Geo Vanola Hyper Twister coaster. This is again huge, but boring. Wow, I bet you didn't see that coming. They went for intensity over airtime and made it quite intense, but it doesn't have any airtime and it's a bit boring. I need to end this video soon, like no one's going to care about this. Hang in there, I've got two more. The penultimate one is Son of Beast. Son of Beast beat Zadra at its own game by being a 218 foot tall wooden structure that fell over. But seriously, this roller coaster was horrifically rough, and it had many issues, including accidents. It's still the only wooden hypercoaster, and unfortunately, it's made it look like doing this isn't a good idea. It lasted from 2000 to 2009 with many problems, and even when it was open, people said it was one of the roughest coasters ever. Last one, hang in there. High Roller at Stratosphere Tower is the world's highest roller coaster, okay, because it's 1,149 feet high. It's basically a kiddie coaster at the top of a huge building, and this is interesting because it looks quite scary. Yeah. Anyway, that's the end. I hope you liked it. I feel like I should have split this into two videos because it ended up being a lot longer than I thought. But anyway, do the stuff that you'd usually do. Just subscribe and go and argue in the comments. Bye.